Hi. I know I haven't been on here for a bit. I don't know, a week or two or anything. I just been super busy with my lawsuits. Um here's like I gotta go to the post office today. Here's all the mail that I've got to send out. Um because it's got to go certified mail. Just to recap, if you haven't all been watching, I have been fighting to adopt my grandkids, sorry. Um for 10 years. And um, it's just really messed up all that went down with the corrupt DCF and the corrupt court systems. Um, I know they're everywhere, but my problems was with the state of Florida. Um, I found out really late that although I had a private petition to adopt my grandchildren, I was passed over and never notified, which is illegal. You're supposed to contact people when there's like cases pending in courts. But they didn't. And also, another thing is when my daughter's rights were terminated, they did not notify her for 6 months and did not allow her to appeal, despite the incompetence of the lawyer who did it because he's corrupt. It's a full corrupt system. Everyone, and it's really criminal and civil conspiracies. You people have to understand that. And there's supposed to be crimes, and our FBI and DOJ are supposed to do things, but they don't. They just allow corruption to run rampant. Um, Especially when it deals with states and politicians. You know, here, uh, I'm a pro se litigant. This right here alone will cost me $40 just to send a few things out certified mail. So I have mentioned in other videos, but I'm just going to sort of recap here. Um, so my four grandchildren were adopted by a foster family because when their first foster that was going to adopt them failed, they didn't call me. They went straight directly to another foster family. I am highly qualified to take care of children. And uh, I also my husband and I passed numerous home studies, which are very in depth and intrusive. Uh, 2 years ago, I found out that my grandson, my oldest grandson, was returned after he was adopted. There's no reason was given. Um, and I think he probably had behavioral issues. I mean, he was the oldest, wasn't a baby. Um, he was probably a young teenager, and they just didn't want him. Now, mind you, they just replace him with more foster children for the funding. Because I've seen pictures of this foster family with my grandchildren, and they got a boatload of kids. She's a part-time police officer. Her husband's, 20 years older, and I don't know what he does for work, but I'm thinking their income isn't enough, and they need the income for a bunch of foster and adoptive kids. But 2 years ago, I was contacted because they have when nobody wants to adopt older children, they try and go through like the woodwork and find any relative to take them. And they found me. They got my number's been the same for like 12 years. So Wasn't really hard to find my phone number to call me. But they were so happy to have me adopt him, have visits and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, they backed out and it was like, well, your background. What background? They refused to tell me what my background is. Not only that, it's been 10 years. Why won't you do another home study? If I had a bad background, why don't you come and see? Because there's nothing in mine and my husband's background that's anything at all. We pass all drug tests because they drug tested me for 9 months straight. 9 months straight. Negative testing. No drugs. So I filed the complaint with DCF head office, heard nothing. And I also asked them, what's the dependency case number so I can put in a petition to adopt? They wouldn't tell me. But anyways, I did my research and stuff like that, and I found out, you know what, I can just go in for a private adoption myself, which I did in May of this year. I put in for a private adoption. Didn't hear anything. Like, give me $400 filing fee or we're going to send you to collections. So I paid the fee, and what did they do? They just disregarded me, my case, my filing fee, and they merged it into the dependency case, which is against precedent case law in the state of Florida. Because if you can hear adoptions, whether it's, a newborn baby or a 14-year-old child, you can hear the adoptions, and it doesn't have to be in dependency court. It can be separate of dependency court. But do they care? No. So they end up closing the case, and I was not made aware of that, of course. Because they don't tell you intentionally that there's back workings going on in the court, despite you have petitions and pay filing fees and everything. But they still don't notify you. Even though you filed as a plaintiff and paid a filing fee. So I was setting up, because they were emailing me, and they only emailed me twice, and one was to tell me, give me the $400 or else. And like I said, I did that. I sent in the $400. The other thing was, as when I sent in the $400, I said, okay, how will I be notified? By mail, by email, whatever, of all notices, orders, whatever, through the court. And they emailed me back and said, it'll all be through your email. So then I looked at so I said, I'm going to set up this case with e-filing so I don't miss anything, because I don't trust them because they're corrupt. And I noticed the case has been closed. So I call the clerk and I find out the case was closed the prior month. I said, well, I didn't, she said, and they mailed you a copy of the order. No, they did not. No, they did not. So then I said, you know what, I'm just going to do a motion for reconsideration and rehearing. And I put in that you cannot close this case. I can file by case law. And I put in the most recent case and prior cases that says I can. And basically what it does, and this is pretty much similar to adoption, is when an adoption is approved, it terminates the rights of the parents. Now, mind you, when I tried adopting them in 2016 and did my home study, I had a lawyer, an adoption lawyer. And in that process, the grandchildren, the mother, my daughter, had to sign her rights over to me and my adoption entity. When that right there should have, you know, ended it all. And I should have been able to adopt them back then. But like I said, this is all about money and corruption. So that was ignored. The motion for reconsideration was ignored. Of course it was. So then I put in a notice to appeal, and that was put through earlier this week. And then I received a whole bunch of orders like, now you have to, serve, the general counsel of DCF, and you have to do this and you have to do that, and so on and so forth. And I had to pay $100 to get that initiated. So far I paid $500, plus, not to mention how many hours. I literally work about 3 hours a day on a minimum of all of my court cases due to corruption to fight for my rights. To fight for my rights. So we'll see where this goes. I have filed over a half a dozen times in the state of Florida. Cases I should have clearly won. I filed through trial courts, the lower tribunal. I filed in the appellate courts, a couple of the DCAs, District Courts of Appeal, and I've also filed in the Supreme Court. And I always get one of two things: dismissed, and you have no rights to request rehearing type thing, or PCA, per curiam affirmed, which basically means we agree with the trial judge, but we're not going to give you a damn reason why. Because we're corrupt, we're lazy fucks, something, I don't know. But when you have all the laws behind you, and they still rule for the corrupt judge, does that mean that the appellate court and the Supreme Court is corrupt too? You do the math. You do the math. I will be going through all of my cases for the last 10 years that I put through Florida courts, and I haven't won a damn one of them. And I'll tell you, when I lived in Massachusetts, and whether I had a lawyer or not, I won cases. Why? Because they weren't corrupt. At least they weren't then. Our corruption in our nation is getting so worse, and we just take it. It's cost me tens of thousands of dollars to fight for my rights. But I'm also learning, because I'm going to law school, and I'm learning how to break things. What is their response going to be, and how to counteract it? Statute of limitation problems? Shotgun pleadings? Foster parents, adopted parents aren't state actors? I'm going to fight all that crap. But we have to sit there and rule judges don't have immunity. We have to. We have to fight this all together, because it might not matter to you today, but the worse the corruption is getting, and the bigger a monster DCF is getting, eventually it will affect all of our lives. All of our lives. And those of you who live in Florida and can't afford to anymore, it's corruption. Plain and simple. It's lobbyists for insurance companies, and lobbyists for this, and lobbyists for that, is what's doing you in. And you can sit there and you can keep your blinders on. But when you're living in a car, or you're in some shit town, shit state you don't want to live in, you did it to yourself. Because you're lazy and you don't want to fight. There are some of us that will fight. But we can't do it alone because one voice doesn't matter in a big whole corruption of millions. It just doesn't. If you want to get rights, you have to fight for them. Watch the movie Iron Jawed Angels and you'll get what I'm saying. All right, I got to get going. I got to go to the post office in a little bit. I will try and do some more videos, hopefully this weekend or something, because there are things I want to talk about. There's really a lot of important things I want to talk about. Just getting the time. Like I spent literally all week working on 2 cases. One in the Federal Court of Appeals and in the Florida State Court of Appeals. So it just takes up so much time, and I'm trying to fight and so many forces and so many ends. But those of you who watch this, I would like if you comment me, and I don't really get comments yet. I don't know why people don't comment. Whether you like my stuff or don't like my stuff or don't disagree, or you don't agree with me, that's fine. That's fine. That's really, because I can show receipts. But this new appeal, do we just think it's going to be dismissed and I have to appeal it to the Supreme Court and then they just you're just a pro se person. You don't matter. Because courts think pro se people are just dumb, ignorant, trailer trash that have no friggin' brain. That's what they think of you. The second is, do you think it's going to get a PCA, a per curiam affirmed? I want to go for the PCA because the first DCA does it to me every freaking time. And I will one day show all the PCAs. And also, what do you think? Do you think that, 8 filing fees through the Florida courts and not getting any due process out of them constitutes fraud? I paid it. I should have some rights in the courts. Do you think that constitutes fraud? I also would like to hear your comments on that. All right. I got to go to the post office, talk to my hubby for a minute. I will come back and discuss more stuff. Thanks so much. Bye.